Um, the fields are all snow packed. We haven't seen the field grass since the middle of December. But we actually hope for more snow up here because we need it for the ranch. But I'm afraid spring is coming quite soon to all of us. Good to have you here as we continue these discussions or talks on silence and stillness, solitude, and so on and so forth. Um, Now, of course, today, a lot of people poo-poo all this stuff about not just religion, but this meditation stuff and so on and so forth. What's the purpose of it? As they're trying to negotiate life on their terms. Well, I think this loss of interest in religion goes back, as some of us know, quite a few centuries in the Age of Enlightenment, which was in the West, by the way. We have to keep in mind when we're looking at silence and stillness, and we say, well, why don't we have more of this? Look at those Japanese Zen people, or those Chinese Chan people, or those people in India who are Buddhists, those Hindu meditators, and so on and so forth. Why isn't there more of that here? Well, they did not go through the Age of Enlightenment. That's a Western European thing, and this country is, for better or worse, a lot about Western European. And the Age of Enlightenment says reason trumps. Reason is the top, and it replaces the spiritual. Starts to. I mean, I don't think someone said, well, reason is really something that we have and it's quite important. And they weren't thinking about replacing religion. It just sort of starts happening over a period of time because we realize we can answer a lot of practical issues. We might call them scientific, biological, medical, so on and so forth. We just improved all these things, our mathematics and so on and so forth. The understanding of the idea that there's such a thing maybe as gravity and so on and so forth. So religion couldn't really respond very well. Well, it might have responded very well to us, but it just ignored it. And that was not good for religion. Certainly wasn't good for my particular brand. But the focus of religion in terms of silence and solitude, interestingly enough, is what you could call communio. In other words, we're supposed to be relational. Now you think, wait a second, you're talking about silence and stillness. Isn't that something you do by yourself? Well, there's things that you do by yourself in a certain manner that helps you to get out of your own self-centered, egocentric way. And that connects you to the power, the spirit, the ultimate reality, whatever you want to call it, God, connects you within. And then that is what's going to connect you to others. That's what religion is supposed to mean. Not so much the rules and the regulations. Yeah, they're there because they're institutionalized. But we have this reason, age of reason, enlightenment, and then us forgetting about the part of religion that is meant to go within us. That in fact, we're made for love. Okay, we're made for love. And I think that's, in one way or another, what people are either running from out of fear or trying to find in their own fashion. And what I'm saying, and many people in the spiritual practice, is that if you take time to connect with your innards, if you will, that Holy Spirit, I call it, that energy that's within you, it's going to make you better able to relate to the world around you and to be more a person of love, because what will be gotten rid of, or at least put aside or diminished in its power, is all the things that get in the way of being loving: selfishness, self-centeredness, pride, fear, anger, rage, and so on and so forth. So this fellow Descartes came along and he said that, I think, therefore I am. That's not very communio. It's very individualistic, and it doesn't really have much to do with religion. I think, therefore I am. That's what it is. It's not relational, it's not loving, but it began to become, I think, I can reason, I can figure things out, so on and so forth. Over a period of time, of course, up until now, we see that the secular is what it became, the secular versus the sacred. These things used to be mixed very well, just as the contemplative life was very well mixed in with the rules and regulations of religion and so on. But now we've got secular sacred, and the secular is all about me. Descartes says, I think, therefore I am, and I can think my way through a lot of things. So it's focused on, the secular is focused on the individual, it's focused on stuff, on things. It may be money, but not always, but it's generally outward things to try to satisfy an inward hunger. The belief is that God is acting within each one of us. But we can get in the way. Think of it in terms of a stage, okay? There's a curtain on a stage, and the curtain opens up, and the action takes place. And if it's a good play, we're pulled into the action. We become part of it. We connect. And the play doesn't just touch our heads with I think, therefore I am. It touches our heart. If it's really a good play, it touches deeply within us. And so think of the play as God at work, acting within us. When we get in the way of that, we close the curtain. It's like closing the curtain. God's still at work, but we got the curtain closed, and we're not connecting because the curtain closed means we're busy with our egocentric selves, our lives of individuality. I don't mean individuality, I mean too much individual. Isolation is what it becomes, and loneliness and separation and alienation and so on and so forth as we're trying to get happy. So this action of God within us is, as I said, we are made for love. We are made for the good of others. That's love. We are made for the good of others. We learn to love ourselves, let go of stuff that gets in that way, then we're better able to love others. So opening the curtain really is what the deep meditation is all about. We don't put on the play. We didn't write the play. That's God's doing. But we got to attend and really focus. I mean, if you say, I'm opening the curtain, but I'm going to read the program while the play is going on, that's not going to be deep meditation. That's just not going to work. And what we find is we say we want to pray, but we get so busy and we think we have to make something happen. I have to read some special words. So I take out my scripture book and I read that. Maybe that'll help me to pray. And it may, but eventually you got to put down the book just as you got to put down the program to the play and just be present to it and let it work on you. So that's more what the contemplative life is about, letting God work on you and you trying to be present. I mean, think about it. You're at a play. Okay, so you come into the play. You're sitting in your seat, and there are people on either side of you. There's a person in front of you. There's somebody in back of you. And maybe you're aware of all those things. The play hasn't started yet. You're looking at your program. Boom, the lights go down. And often we do that when we're trying to meditate. We put the lights down, and we put our program down, and the curtain opens. And if we allow ourselves to be drawn into the play, try to pay a little attention, we don't notice the people around us. And that's what deep meditation is all about, is there's still people around you. There's still stuff going on, but you don't notice it anymore. You're just drawn into the play. I remember going to, I've seen the Nutcracker any number of times, as has many of us. And I walk into the theater and it was an evening performance, I think. And I thought, an evening performance, there'd be no children here. It was just packed with kids. I guess they were taking a day off from school the next day and they're not going to get any sleep that night. So it's just packed with kids, and some of them, they're small kids, so they're kneeling on their chairs so they can see, and so on and so forth. And they, oh, this is going to be complete chaos. This is not going to be any fun. Tchaikovsky's great music, and so on and so forth, and the Sugar Plum Fairy. It's going to be a mess. Play starts. I never noticed the kids. They shut up because they put themselves into the play. And I did too. So anybody can meditate, even a child, if you will, if they learn to let go and let God, which is a pretty famous saying in itself. So what meditation does is it keeps us from making ourselves the center of attention. It's not all about me. So I need to practice this prayer. It's what is often called spiritual gymnastics. I mean, if you want to get in shapes in some way, you got to get to the gym, or you got to do your workout at home. I suppose with COVID, you got your Peloton or whatever, and you're doing your home exercises, but you got to do it on a regular basis. If somebody wants to do a running race, they're going to have to exercise on a regular basis. So you have to do this spiritual practice regularly. So you're in your spiritual gym, if you will, every time you sit down in your special place to do your prayer. And eventually, your special place, as you get better at this, will be any place. You'll be able to pray on a bus. It's just, you just got to get out of your own way and stop thinking about you. Like I was thinking about me and how these kids were going to bug me for the ballet, and it didn't bother me at all because I got out of myself. The play took me out of myself. There's a story about I'm sure some of you have heard about the Mayo Clinic. We've all heard about the Mayo Clinic. And I'm thinking about the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. That was the first one, the main one. So there's these two doctor guys, the Mayo brothers, and they got an idea and a way of doing medicine for people, but they had no place, but they didn't have much of a place. And along comes the Sisters of St. Francis, and they meet these guys. I mean, they're up there. They're all in Minnesota. I think it's Minneapolis. And the Mother Superior sees the potential in these guys, knows of the need for this kind of medical practice, and comes up with a solution. Now, there's a woman who got out of her own way. And they had a building that wasn't being optimized. And they used that building to build the Mayo Clinic. And so the Mayo Clinic really came around because of the Catholic Church and a woman religious who got out of her own way, saw a need outside of herself, saw a solution to that need through the Mayo brothers, and connected it all. And if you want to know more about this, there's a pbs.org, pbs.org, and it's called Mayo Clinic, Faith, Hope, and Science. A wonderful thing about meditation. Here was science. Remember I talked about Descartes, the age of reason, religion's losing it, but it didn't have to be that way. If we had stayed with a more contemplative practice in our institutional religions, we would have gotten out of our own way, our own fears that we now had to compete with science. We're losing members and so on. And so we got out of that way, and we would see how we might have the possibility of working with science to make it a better world. That's what the contemplative life can do for you. And believe me, this Mother Superior had to have a contemplative life for her to see this and then doggedly work on it year after year after year. It's not Minneapolis, it's Rochester, Minnesota had a need. So the male brothers put it all together. So that's just one example. Now, for the majority of people today, more than likely, their attitude towards silence and solitude is not, it's a bunch of hooey, it's stupid, it's none of that, not really. They're indifferent. It's one thing if you've done a practice, or for instance, I meet people who say, well, I used to be Catholic and now I think it's a bunch of baloney. Can't stand the Catholic Church, and so on and so forth. So they're actually actively antagonistic. But what I see more people is they have absolutely no idea because they never thought about it. No one ever talked about it. It's just not even in their horizon. So they're just indifferent to religion. Well, a lot of people are just indifferent. They didn't practice solitude and silence. I mean, if you were to go into the library of a university, middling university, you would probably see, if you saw students studying, don't go on a Friday night, but if you see students studying, a lot of them have ear pods in. We can't stand to study unless there's sound. They can't stand much unless there's sound. They got to have sound. They have noise. Or they got to be talking to somebody if they're walking around, the cell phone, and so on and so forth. One of the things that's nice about the monastery is we don't have any cell phone service. And I thought that was an inconvenience when I came here. It's not an inconvenience now. And I'm thinking of just turning the darn thing completely off. I see a little beep, 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 which means you got a text message or something like that. But I don't have to look at it. And I'm not here to deal with text messages and respond to people in this way or that, because I'm supposed to be doing this practice. But for a lot of people, they have to be connected, because if they're not connected, they may miss out on something. They can't stand to be in their own skin without something to distract them. I think is a big piece of it. And what we're trying to do is feel comfortable inside our own skin. I mean, I'm saying that this power, this energy, this ultimate reality is very comfortable within us. Problem is, we're not comfortable within us. So many people say, there's nothing inside me. There's no spiritual force inside me, because their idea is, why would anything want to be inside of me? I don't even like being inside of me. Now, they might not say that, but if you ask them to sit quietly and gave them a little method to sit in silence and stillness, they go crazy. They just can't stand to be just with themselves. And I often say, then why does anybody else want to be with you? You don't want to be with you. Why should anybody else want to be with you? It's a good thing to keep in mind. If you're feeling lonely and alienated and separate, you might ask yourself, am I part of the problem? So they're kind of in a limbo of indifference to silence and solitude. So it's not as if you can convince them to drop their negativity. They don't have any opinion one way or the other. And the best thing I think that we can do is to be practitioners of this prayer, so that they won't see us praying that way. When people meet us, there's something about us that attracts them and maybe makes them wonder, how is it that you have this, whatever that I'd like? Maybe a peacefulness, maybe a compassion, maybe a concern, maybe a solution to a problem, like the Mother Superior of the Sisters of St. Francis. So they're indifferent to that. They're also indifferent to unbelief. They don't really care one way or the other. So I think it's especially important for us who are practicing it. If you want to appeal to somebody else who at some point might have a hunger to change their lives and get better. I think you don't bring people around to the spiritual by telling them, you better You better, or else you're going to get. Doesn't do it. It's the way you live your life. It's a little bit like, say you were a recovering alcoholic, for instance, or a drug addict. Let's say you're a recovering alcoholic. And you run up against somebody who's saying, I think they got a problem and they'd like to do something about it. You say, well, you better stop drinking. And this is what's going to happen to you. Well, believe me, they're not going to listen. But if they see that you live a certain kind of a tranquility in you amidst the problems all around you, and they may want to know how you got that way. And then you start saying, well, I used to drink a lot. Now I don't. Here's how I did it. So you've got to have a practice that changes you. And then you become the messenger, and the message for that matter, because of the way you live your life. So that's what I'm trying to do. I mean, I struggle with it, but that's what I'm trying to do. And each day I examine my conscience at the end of the day and I say, well, how did I do on this, Terry? And often I find out that the extent of my meditation is the extent of how well I live this day in relation to being with me and being amongst others. I mean, I live in a community of people. We have to work together and get along. So it's not that people disbelieve. It's not that people are rejecting this kind of prayer. It's just that it just takes too much effort unless they have an overwhelming need. Think to yourself, why are you even attending this talk? Why are you even thinking about a practice? Why did you even start a practice? And why did you give it up? If you gave it up and now you want to start it again. Because it's going to take some effort and time and sacrifice. So there has to be, for most of us, a need. And I would call it's the hunger of the heart. And you've tried other ways to satisfy that hunger. You go back to the alcoholic, they try drinking, they try drugs, you try food, you try money, you try a bigger house, better car, different clothes, facelift, whatever. And none of it's working, short term, but none of it seems to touch what I call the hunger of the heart. And then you stumble upon someone or something that says, oh, why don't you come to us? Or, oh, here's what I did, or here's how I live. If you want it, I'll try to help you. So we need to be practitioners if we want to have compassion for a suffering world. So think of the world as the modern world, or the postmodern world, is a world of non-seekers. They still have hearts that hunger, but they're not seeking in this particular direction. And that's just kind of the way it is. But so it's important to remember that sometimes you find yourself in places, I seem kind of odd. Nobody else seems to be doing what I'm doing or interested in what I'm interested in. Well, you live in the modern world of non-seekers. It's not that they're not seeking anything. I mean, people looking for jobs. Home buying market is booming, so they're seeking. But they're seeking that kind of seeking is not going to seep deep enough to satisfy the hunger of the heart. So that's what I mean by they're non-seekers at some depth. So they're looking for meaning, a livable meaning in their lives. And we have to ask ourselves, well, what's the livable meaning in my life? And you can look at, where are you spending all your energy? Your time, talent, treasure, whatever. Where are you spending it? And so for some of us, we're spending it not in a place or a thing. We're spending it in anxiety, in fear, in worry, resentments. Or for some of us, we get into there's other addictions than what I mentioned. There's a lot of addictions. And someone gave me this example yesterday, and I don't know where they got it from. Addiction is like balloon that's blown up. And somebody has an addiction, say to alcohol, and they get into AA and they work on it. And what it does is it squeezes the balloon a little bit tighter, but then it bubbles someplace else. And so now you have an addiction to something else that you got to deal with. And we have various addictions. Some of us addiction to fantasy. That's our escape. So you say, I dealt with my alcohols, my drugs, my food, my gambling, my pornography, or whatever. And then they come up with this addiction to fantasy. And I know how many people talk about it. You find yourself always living some other life. What's the matter with the one you got? Well, it may have a lot of problems, and you're not solving it with the bigger car, the house, getting in good physical condition. Somehow those all things all made you feel a little bit better, but then there was still more because it's not the hunger of the heart that's being fed. So people live in fantasies. And it's just escape. They walk around thinking about themselves as somebody else. It's tough, but I think if you can just practice on a regular basis some silence and stillness, not forgetting your thoughts, which are sometimes fantasies, and not paying attention to the sounds around you, not paying attention to your busy mind, and just sit and be. When you find yourself drifting off into some thought, notice your breathing, or come up with a word or two. I often use the one, let go, let go. It's part of let go, let God, but that's too long. So I just let go. And I find myself just letting go and just being. And that's all I got. That's all I have to do. God does the rest. So the hardest part about silence and stillness is getting still and shutting up and not paying attention to all the noise that's going on inside of you. Now, I think what this is going to do is, and I'll speak especially for my tradition, which is the Catholic one, but I'm sure other traditions share this. Certainly the Puritans, who were the ones who kind of got things going in this country in 1607, I think it was, someplace up in Massachusetts, it's going to open me to culture in a much more positive way. In other words, what's going on in the culture that can express this hunger of the heart, this power that's within me, that's all around us. Holy Spirit is what I might call it. What in the culture expresses this? And you right away, you're running into religion. I say, no, run into religion, because a culture has a spirituality to it, someplace in there. I mean, someone could write, I go back to the play, someone writes a play or writes a piece of music for a ballet or a symphony. And you might say, oh, well, they said they weren't particularly religious one way or the other, but it's a spiritual entity, because when that piece of culture touches you, as it will if it's good, it moves you within. It connects to the power within, because that same power that's within you, that same loving God, as I call it, is in the art itself that you're watching and experiencing, because it's all one. It's all one. So, but unfortunately, when all this spirituality becomes institutionalized and becomes religion, you can get a problem. So somebody said, what's the Catholic attitude towards culture? And here, you remember, in the beginning was the Word. It says in John's Gospel, in the beginning was the Word. In Genesis, it's first chapter of John, in the beginning. Here's the Word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was no. Unfortunately, that has been too much of my Catholic institutionalized. The Word is, in the beginning was the Word, it was no. Anything going on in the world is no. It's all bad. And I don't think so. And in fact, a lot of my religion was very supportive of the arts over the centuries. They were about the only ones supportive of the arts in Western Europe, with painting and music and so on and so forth, for quite a while. Fortunately, there's a whole strain in a lot of religions. I think even if you were to look at, say, Buddhism, for a while, I think Buddhism didn't bother with the cultural world, with the secular world, we might call it. But when they came to this country, they realized that there was an interest in religion. There was an interest in religion and how the world is going on around us. Specifically, there was a lot of social services provided by religion for the poor, the hungry, the homeless, the naked, the crazed, and so on and so forth, such as the example I used at the Mayo Clinic. So when Buddhism came here, they saw that there's a lot of interest in religion and making the world a better place, which was not a Buddhist thing, and they began to adjust, because that's what Buddhism does. It adjusts to the culture so that it can get its message of Buddhism to be taken by that particular mentality. So they became much more interested in how the world is going. And so that's what religion at its best. I think when religion is practicing a contemplative way, it wants to dialogue as opposed to condemn. And we had a big bishops' council back when I was in college, which was a long time ago. And it was called Vatican II. That's the title of it. And tons of bishops all over the world gather in Rome. And they even invited non-Catholic ministers and Jews and so on and so forth. And they say, we want a dialogue. We don't want to be battling culture. We want a dialogue with the culture and with unbelievers. They didn't want to be into what we call today culture wars. Well, obviously, some of that is falling apart, but at least there was that effort. And that was a lot of the impetus of myself, because I went into the seminary soon after this whole thing was over, about 7 years after this Vatican II thing was over. And that's what drew me to it, was being in dialogue with those who saw themselves as outside of, saw themselves as hungry for something, but they didn't know what. And I thought, it is the contemplative life. If I didn't quite use those terms, it was still taking time for silence and stillness. My own particular path, I was reflecting on this recently. A lot of you hear a lot of people up here say, oh, it's so wonderful to be outdoors. It's just such a beautiful, I want to be out in the woods. I want to be hiking. I want to go skiing. I want to do this and that. Outdoors, outdoors, outdoors. Because that's where I find God, or God's creation. And what I think is, where you find God is always where you first find this spiritual center that you can't even name. Where you first find it is where you keep going back. And I found it sitting alone in a church when I was a boy in the Bronx. I have absolutely no interest in roaming around outdoors. I can walk outside and just walk down the road, and I can see the same mountain someone else will see 2,000 feet up, breaking their back, getting 2,000 feet up. I have no interest in that, because I found God indoors. And I love to just go sit in the chapel and be alone, because that was my first experience. And so you think, oh, he's up here and he must be hiking. No, I just do our local roads by and large. I probably haven't taken a hike in several years and have no big interest in hiking. I don't have to go anywhere to find God. I find God within. But other people, they have to go someplace and do it. Well, fine. I don't. And I think that each of us has to recognize that in ourselves. Where is it that God first spoke to me? Where and how? And that often is what we'll keep going back to in terms, because each of us are unique, different. We're not separate from one another, but we're not the same either. So each of us is going to have our own form of silence and stillness and solitude and the ways that we do it. And I agree, some people can do this walking. I can to some extent, but I'm much better just sitting quietly in a room. So I'm an indoor monk, if you will. So I wanted to be in dialogue with people who are not like me, which is why I became a Paulist, because we tend to stay on the outer edges. We're not so much worried about whether you become a Catholic or not. If we're worried at all, it's that you find that spiritual hunger somehow fed. And if we can help you to do that and say, do what I do, all we can do is say, this is what I do. And you can find it in various paths. So I have to study some other paths because some other path might make more sense. So to be in dialogue is important, but not all bishops want to be in dialogue with their subjects, or that's just the way it is. So sometimes you swim in a little upstream in whatever world you're in. Say you're going to work someplace, where you're retired and you're gathering together with people, and they don't have any interest in what you're doing, but you mention that you do it, and you'll see the kind of responses that they make. So you just have to realize sometimes you're swimming upstream, and that's just the way that it is. But I find that you're not going to get this from catechisms. Catechisms give you answers to questions that you may not even be asking. And it appeals to your head. I'm talking about something that appeals to the heart. Mystery. We live, David Steindl-Rast, he's still alive. I think guy's 90 something. And he's been in Bold, he's been everywhere. You probably run into him. We live in mystery, he says. And we do, we live in mystery. So this interior presence, this God, is never going to be understood, but it can be loved because it's energy, it's power, it's a verb. And that's why I don't so much like the word God, but it's one people can jump to right away because it gives you something in a box, a thing, a noun, and God's not a noun, it's a verb. And it's active energy, and it's about our becoming our fullest self, all we're meant to be. You might say this interior presence is our fullness. Our fullness. You sometimes hear, I am God. I've heard that in theology and Christianity. Well, what's that about? Is God is my fullness. And if I can touch that presence, I'm touching my very fullness. It's not, here's God, here's me. God, you touch me and I get better. And it's because we're so dualistic thinking. You got to get out of your mind. It's all dualism up there. So dualism cannot convey the union that I'm trying to talk about. And I can never really talk about it correctly because it's got to be experienced. Words, we do the best we can. So you're not going to get this union, you're already in the union, you just don't know it. Information is not going to make it work. And that's what you get in schools. You get information. It appeals to the Descartes Cartesian idea of I think, therefore I am. And so I got a lot of information, but I'm not a particularly happy person. And school can only do so many things. So we need to be schooled in this spiritual practice. And deep meditation is to let go of that dualistic mind that's kind of got us, because we're trained to be dualistic. We're trained to solve problems. It's the scientific world, but even the scientific world knows that it's not everything, and it's starting to discover that there's a little bit more than they can even. There's a mystery in reality, is what they're beginning to see. There's a mystery in reality. And what we're saying is yes, and the mystery is personal, and its presence, and it can be loved, and it can be touched, and it will change your life. So that's what meditation is. Let go of the stuff that gets in the way. Now, how's meditation going to get me there? Well, you're here. You just don't know it. So meditation is to help you get the stuff out of the way that's getting in the way. It's not to take you someplace. You're already here. You just don't know it with all your knowledge and all your degrees and so on and so forth. So the signs of God's presence, we look for the signs of God's presence in our lives. I see the presence of God in the lives of somebody who's changed. Somebody who I used to know who was acting crazy and destructive and addictive in some way or fashion, at least addictive to self-centeredness, selfishness. And now I see a different person. That to me exhibits that power, that presence, that force, that energy, that ultimate reality that's within us. That's how it's worn. And worn so people can see. And yet you don't try to make people see it. You just work on yourself. It's so ego-less. And people pick up on it. And then they get attracted. They don't quite know why they're attracted to you, but they're attracted to you because of the way your manner begins to shine on the outside. So that's our experience in prayer will shine so that the modern, indifferent person who's suffering in some way, and when they become aware enough of their suffering, they'll start searching. Because what modern people look for is not catechism and not doctrine and dogma. They're looking for experience. Show me the experience. And that's much different. And I think that where a lot of religious schools are behind the times is they're still into teaching you stuff. STEM schools, science, technology, engineering, and math. That's the focus, so you can get a good job and not have to live in your parents' basement. But that's not enough. When people are hungry, when they feel something and something's just not, I'm out of sorts. They're looking for an experience, not an answer. And you're the experience. And therefore you lead them to an answer. And they have to, an answer that fits them. But you're the experience in the way you're living your life. So sometimes we often think, how can I make this world a better place? Am I doing enough for society? Am I helping the poor, the lonely, the homeless, and so on and so forth? Well, also you might say amongst that, how about the indifferent, the spiritual hungry, the alienated, the empty, person who's afraid, who doesn't even like to be in their own skin? Don't they need some help too? They usually don't get listed in social services. So a great social service that you do is your spiritual practice. You practice on a regular basis, and no matter what else you do in the world, they're going to pick up on that. That's what they'll pick up on, because people are looking for experience. I know I am. If somebody says, well, I do this practice, I said, I'll might listen, but I'm trying to listen, which is what I think the contemplative practice does. It makes you a better listener. It takes you deeper than the words that people are saying, and you say, well, are they walking the walk? That's really what you want to know. Are they just talking the talk? So here I am talking away. I better be walking the walk, or else I'm just a hypocrite. So I have to deal with that on a regular basis. It's Terry Ryan. How are you doing today in terms of what you're talking about? How are you living it out? It can be a mixed message. All the blogs that I write, 2 or 3 people read them, I know, but all the blogs that I write, these daily blogs that I put out on Facebook, there's struggles with me. And I pick up something that somebody says, oh, this is a good one. Maybe it'll help you. That's why I put them out. This is helping me. Maybe it'll help you. I don't know if it'll help you. And that's what we do. We don't say, here's the answer, do this and get right. That never worked for me and never certainly won't work with me, that's for sure. So the hunger for solitude that a lot of people in the modern world have is really going to end up as trips into loneliness, depression, and isolation. So they may pick up on, just leave me alone. Solitude, that's what I want. Leave me alone. These people bug me, drive me crazy. Because they think of solitude as just being away from everybody. Solitude is, yes, being away, but it's not being away from yourself. And they don't know how to be with themselves because they don't have a practice and they don't have any sense of an intimate other, if you will. That there's dropping into a noun, the other. They have no sense of this some intimate energies that's within them. They just don't have a sense of it. But if they see something in you, they might ask some questions and then you can do a little talking about it. So just to say, oh, you need more solitude. They don't know. That's like telling me, you ought to do more trigonometry. I don't even know. I barely passed trigonometry. I don't understand it at all. I mean, I'm lost there. So you just, you can't just use a word and assume that everybody translates it correctly. For a lot of modern people, solitude means being by myself, and they don't want that. They don't want that, or they don't like being in their own skin, because by themselves, there's only themselves to them. So they got enough of that. I think the monastic life keeps a balance. I live with others, and I'm part of their lives. You can live with others and not be part of their lives. I mean, you can be a college student living with 3 other college students that have absolutely nothing to do with one another, but you're living with one another, but that's not a community. And certainly isn't going to do much for spiritual growth. Well, it might help you to practice patience, forgiveness, avoid rage or whatever. But I think we have a nice balance here. And I like living in a community that has the balance of I have time for solitude and silence. And when we're together, we are together for one another. We care about one another. That, I think, is the difference for me, not just living under the same roof. I don't like really the idea of moving all around. Because when you move like that, everybody around you are strangers. Let me context this a little. I remember when I used to live in an apartment in Chicago and another apartment in San Francisco when I was in my business years. One of the things I didn't like was being in the apartment by myself sometimes. I could just feel it, especially in the evening, but it could be other times. It's so different now because now I like being with myself in the chapel in my room, reading, just being with me. It's so different, but I didn't like it. I was uncomfortable in my own skin, though I didn't know I was uncomfortable in my own skin. What I thought was I'm missing something's out there and I'm missing it by being there. I got to go out. And I'd go out and I wouldn't know anybody on the street. So I felt strange indoors. Now I'm out and I'm strange. I go into a bar. I don't know anybody in the bar. So it's this moving around. It's all about strangeness and strangers, and it's not communal. It's not connective because I didn't know how to connect to myself. You can't be disconnected with yourself and then go out and be in a room with people you don't know and feel connected. That's why a lot of people drink. They feel disconnected and they drink and they feel connected, but it's not going to work in the long haul. And another thing by moving around a lot is you end up with no one expecting you to do anything. They're not asking you to do anything. Think again of standing in the middle of a cocktail party or a big reception or, I don't know, intermission at a concert, okay? And you're just standing around. The room is filled with people, or the outdoors is filled with people. You don't know any one of them. They have no expectations from you. They don't know you. They're not interested in knowing you. And it's all such a strange world. And I think that's what a lot of our lives are like. We keep ending up in the midst of people, places, and situations where nobody has any expectations of us. They're all strangers. And but we keep doing it, thinking that I'm missing something or this is the place to be. And yet you don't feel comfortable. And then you go home and you're by yourself and you're still uncomfortable. The modern world without an interior life is a tough place to live. Whereas when I talked about the community of the monks, we have expectations of one another. We're not just sharing physical space. We have expectations of one another. There are things I need to do for the sake of them, and there's things they do for the sake of me. And we live as a community because we do those things for one another. But that all comes out of the contemplative life. You just don't engender in yourself, I'm going to live with these people and we're going to get along and have a community. It's not going to work. It is not going to work. You'll just be roommates, housemates, or be like living in an apartment building. You're a tenant. And I don't want to be a tenant anymore. I don't want to be a visitor. I want to be part of. And that has come out of my contemplative life has taught me that. Be a part of, not just living in the same space as other people, but having nothing to do with them having nothing to do with me, and them not really caring one way or the other. So I think there's just so many things that can come out of this contemplative practice in terms of how we decide to live our lives. With whom do we interact and why? And it'll come out of the contemplative practice, I tell you. I'll give you another example. And this comes from a lot of college stuff. There's a group on college campuses, very spiritual, driven by religion, called Focus Group, called Focus. It's an acronym. And they're very bonded with one another, and they all agree with one another. That bonds them, makes them feel safe. We all agree. If you don't agree, you're not part of our group. We'll try to convert you to be part of our group. What happens when they leave school? They go out in the world and they drift away from religion. And the reason they drift away from religion is because they feel like strangers. In college, when they had that college religion group, and were trying to get other people to join it, they felt part of something. They don't know how to find a new way of being part of something. And after they got out, they go to a church and nobody cares about them. Yeah, you young people, it's nice that you're here, but please, I got my own life. Don't bug me. It's a group of people going to church who don't really have a deep enough contemplative life that they would care about the stranger. That's what's going to change with you. You're going to care about the stranger. You're going to notice things around you that you didn't notice before because of your interior life. That's one of the ways you're going to connect. You will see somebody walk into a room and you will know they don't know anybody. And instead of the comfort zone of talking to the people you already know and agree with, you're going to go over and talk to that stranger and welcome them. And welcome them by listening to them and asking them about themselves. I've heard all this stuff in Catholic churches about, oh, please join us. We're so friendly. We love you. You walk into the room and nobody talks to you. They just want to talk to their friends. They just want to talk to people who agree with them. So you've got to have a deeper life than just going to church or synagogue or whatever. You've got to have a deeper interior life, because you connect with yourself within, you'll connect with yourself without. You won't get this as children, what I'm talking about, because as children, what children need is security. They need rules. They need regulations. So they need the language of obedience, if you will. Go to church on Sunday, for instance, or go to synagogue on Friday, whatever. It appeals to a child. It's got some assurances. It's got some structure. When they get older, they leave it because they want something else. The problem is we don't give them something else. And I hope that this monastery, when it reopens again, and through Zoom now, can give the something else that people are hungry for. Now you may be hungry for me to stop talking so you can get something to eat or to drink. So I think we're going to stop now and take how long a break?
We're going to take a 10-minute break.
We'll come back. To me?
Yeah. We'll come back at 10:10. 10 after 10.
10:10. Okay, that's the name of a restaurant in Boulder, 10:10. Okay, we'll see you in 10 minutes. I'm going to go down and maybe take some of that dough bread out of the refrigerator because I got to bake today. See you in a little bit. I'm unmuted. Okay. We back? 1 minute. Okay, it's 10:10. Hope everybody's back, who's ever coming back. And as we get settled in the room for our 20-minute silence and solitude session, I want to bring up a book that a friend of mine, Sid, sent to me and talked about, and I've been looking at it, and it hits me with something else I've been studying about the now. I keep mentioning cooking, and this book is called No Recipe. Yeah, you can't see it with a virtual background. It's called No Recipe, and it's by, Chris will put it in the chat. It's called No Recipe. It's by Edward Brown. And this is from the Tassajara bread baking people. And I have 2 Tassajara bread baking books, or cooking books that have bread baking in them. And one of the things that this No Recipe emphasizes, it's, why is it saying it doesn't have recipes? It's to transform the cook, not just the food. But what it says is, when you're chopping vegetables, chop vegetables. Well, yeah, it's very Buddhist, right? But what it's trying to do is to get you in the now moment. And David Steindl-Rast has been saying this. Learn to be in the now. Because when you're in the now moment, you're with this power, this energy, this spirit that's within, because it only is in the present moment. Past is for your memory. Future is for your mind and for your anxieties. But the present is where the divine lives, and it's where you actually live. And to get into the now, stop thinking about other things than what you're actually doing. So when you're cooking, it's a great way to practice a meditation. I'm chopping vegetables. Think about chopping vegetables. Be present to chopping vegetables instead of thinking about, why am I chopping these vegetables? These monks are worthless. Why don't they cook? Why am I doing the cooking? They ought to be cooking for me. And they don't like stuff that I make. They're too picky. I don't know why I live here. I hate this place. I'm leaving. Well, you're chopping vegetables, but you're crazy. And I've been there, and I can get there any day. I don't want to be there. So No Recipe. It's not a long book, and it doesn't have to be. You don't have to be a cook to do this book, to read this book. You don't have to be a cook. But if you are a cook, I think it'll help as well. But it's to try to get you living in the now moment. Okay, so now we're going to do a little meditation. And this is going to be 20 minutes, and I'm going to time it. Now, you say, what am I supposed to do? Well, how about not moving, for one? So get in a position that you can be in for 20 minutes. Then say to yourself, we'll say it, I am in this position now for 20 minutes to open myself to a presence, a power within. And I'm not going to pay attention to my mind or to sounds around me. And I'm just going to notice my breathing whenever I feel distracted. Or I'm going to use a word, like I mentioned before, let go. That's all you're going to do. You're not going to try to have spiritual thoughts. You're not going to try to feel better. You're not going to try to do anything except stop paying attention to your head and just be. So let us begin. Okay, when you're ready, just open your eyes. Okay. Going to mention another book. Where is it? Oh, I have to go find it, so I will mention it. It's by David Steindl-Rast, and it's really the history of his life in 9 chapters for each decade. Fascinating life, but it's got a lot of good insights in there. I am through you that I am, something like that. It's put up by the Paulist Press, by the organization of which I'm a part. So here we are with 25 participants, including myself and Chris. That makes 23 others. This is being recorded, by the way, and Chris will let you know in the beginning, remind you where you can find it after he puts it on YouTube, where you can find that YouTube. And we make it very easy now. So what do people have? Questions? No questions.
Father, can I
Go
ask
ahead.
a question audio wise? This is Ski Sparrow. It's good to see you again. My question is, when you're deep in meditation and prayer, is there a way to discern what is God versus the devil versus your ego that's speaking to you and giving you direction?
Well, if you deepen it, as someone says, the devil is more on the surface, if you will, use a kind of vision. The devil is more on the surface, and you're too deep. The power of evil cannot reach your heart center. That's why it seems to be able to move you in terms of moods and feelings and thoughts. But change will come from the depths of the heart when you touch it in deep prayer. So it's in deep prayer, you're just not really aware of anything. There's no dualism. Dualism would be you and the devil, you and ego. And how will you know? Well, how will you know that it really is? Because you'll change. The best way to know that this prayer is working, that is to know up here, is not in the prayer itself. At depth, you're not even aware of the time passing. There were moments, certainly in that 20-minute sit, I was not aware of sitting, looking for the 20 minutes to be up or anything like that. But when you'll know that the prayer is working, that you have hit a depth, is the way your life begins to change for the better. And better would be, I could say the way you are with others. If you were Buddhist, it would be the Eightfold Path. Those 8 things, you would just become connected to them in a way that you relate differently to. First of all, you relate to people, and not out of anxiety or competition. You have more of a compassion, more of an ability to forgive. You'll be more at peace. You'll be more in the present. If you're a cook, like I referred to that book, No Recipe, when you're chopping celery, and you're not thinking about other things. Some people say, well, when I'm chopping celery, I'm deep into meditation. I say, yeah, you probably cut your finger too, so you got to pay attention. But I think the active life is where you pay attention to what's going on now. And you will see that in a conversation with another person, you'll begin to listen better. How do you listen better? You stop trying to think of your answer to whatever they're saying. You stop trying to let go of the judgments that are wandering through your mind that you're making up about this person because of what they're saying. You stop thinking of them in a certain way, and you start being present to them. These are all ways that it'll change. 2 new messages. What are they, Chris?
Julie asked, Father Terry, could you speak to how you can clear your mind while in meditation? Sometimes it seems easier than others. Sometimes I become frustrated with not being able to clear extraneous thoughts, even though I'm using a mantra.
Well, I think can be very normal, especially early on, because it's not as if I can use the word God, it's not as if God is not at work. In other words, God's unable to function because you can't get still. And first of all, you don't clear your mind. What you do is you stop paying attention to it. Your mind is never clear because that's what a mind does. It thinks, it stores stuff. It's always active. You don't pay attention to it. And at some point, as the meditation gets deeper, you don't even notice the thoughts. Initially, they're just background. And your mantra is to keep them in the background. But sometimes, yes. And I think it's not that I did something wrong. It may be. I'm just hooked on some recent event. But it could just be to remind me, hey, Terry, you're not in charge. Don't sit here and say, okay, I'm going to practice my centering prayer and God's going to show up and be nice. No, that's just ego control again. The only reason you have methods is to get out of your own way. And sometimes it's just a half hour of spaghetti. It's just all mixed together. One thought can't get unraveled from another, and so on and so forth. And I just say, that's the way it is. Get up and come back again. I mean, it's no different than, I bake bread, okay? Some days it turns out really well, and other days it turns out not so well. And I have to remind myself that the bread's going to do what it's going to do. I can only do the best I can. I don't have control. See, meditation, there's a lot of people want control. And so they meditate to have control. And the control means I'm going to feel better. I'm going to feel better. And what I say is, will the world be better because I practice? So maybe it was just a pile of mush, this half hour. But maybe I'll be a better person during the day anyway, which means it wasn't a waste of time. It just meant I didn't feel particularly good, which is just the ego. But I might be a better person during the day to other people. Somebody who bugs me, doesn't bother me. It does the same thing he always does, but it doesn't bother me anymore. I said, how'd that happen? They haven't changed. What did I do? I think that's how you see it. One of the best ways that you see changes in your life is not that you're kind to the stranger on the street. It's that you're kind to the person that's closest to you. I am through you, so I, David Sanarez. That's right. That's the name of the book. I just finished that. Matter of fact, I'll be talking some about this. It'll be available tomorrow in our bookstore. That's good because I'm going to be talking next Wednesday at 2:00. I may be talking about that, some of his ideas, and cooking. Cooking in terms of spirituality. Okay.
Any other questions? You can unmute yourself and just ask the question directly, or you can use the chat function and I'll be glad to read it for you.
Father, do you believe we're on Earth? Is it a test? And there's different grades that we will achieve. And with that, different levels of heaven?
You mean on the earth?
Yep.
Well, I like the idea the kingdom of God is in your midst. Not that here's the earth, and when you die, then you have the afterlife, and that'll be heaven. Because I happen to be a follower of Jesus Christ, so his words tend to influence me. And he said, the kingdom is in your midst. So it's not this now and that then. And I have no idea how one makes that transition. After death, there's no time after you die. It's not a continuation chronologically of my life here on earth. So I think you could look at it, there's levels of, I don't look at it so much, levels of heaven. I think of it as levels of relationship. Will always be somewhat dualistic, which means the kingdom is in your midst and you're almost in it, or you're in it from time to time. But we keep drifting back into a duality. But I think the transformation is where we have less and less living in duality, and more the aha moments of we are all one. Now, the way I would see this is a grocery store, which I haven't been in a while. But yeah, I have been, but I haven't done much shopping in the last year. But the grocery store strikes me because you get in the grocery store and you're very dualistic. You've got your list because you keep forgetting things because you're thinking of so many other things. People are in your way. The lines are too long. Your parking place is too far away, and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, something comes over you, a sense of oneness with the whole room of the supermarket. It'll be moments like that. You'll just kind of have a few more moments. And when you have those moments, you'll suddenly act differently. For instance, a way that I've seen it is when I'm into dualistic competitive me, the line's too long. The person in front of me is too slow. They got too much stuff. When I have a sense of oneness, I begin to talk to them about something in their cart. And it might have to do with, I'm not being nosy. I just might say, I've never tried that particular product before. What is it that you like about it? Maybe I use a different brand or something like that. You'd be surprised because we're all just standing there doing nothing, waiting to get to the cash register. And I've just never had a person says, oh, shut up and leave me alone. You must be a philanderer or something like that. No, they'll talk to you about your stuff. I'll talk about my stuff. And in other words, shoppers tend to have something to do with food, no? And so they know little things about food, or they think they do. And plus, I'll learn something. I may find out something. Say, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I might try that next time. Oh, I didn't know that about that yogurt. Like non-fat yogurt, you think, okay, I can wear my skinny pants now. Non-fat yogurt has a lot of sugar in it. Why does it have sugar in it? To make it taste decent. So practice your meditation and you can wear your skinny pants.
All right, any other questions? Again, you can unmute yourself and ask directly, or you can use the chat function and I'll be glad to read it for you. We just got a few more minutes here. And Father Terry, I think that's everything. I don't see any more questions.
Okay, well, thank you all. Now, let's see, I'm on next Wednesday at 2 Mountain Time. And then I'm on with SOS Seekers of Silence out of Knoxville. I'll be on the first Saturday of April talking about Thomas Thurman. And that'll be 9 o'clock Mountain Time. And we'll have to send out Chris will send out that Zoom number. And then we'll be back here again for Chris on
April
third
17th.
Saturday of April. It's April 17th.
Yes. And for the Seekers of Silence, that is a separate group. They meet. They're from Knoxville. I will get that Zoom number. I will record it, but I will send out that information. It will be on snowmassbookstore.com. But if you're on my mailing list, I will definitely send that information out to you as well. So we'll keep you. But 2 o'clock Wednesday, Father Terry's going to finish up our Lenten series.
Okay. Our times are all Mountain Daylight Savings Time. Still snowy in Boulder, more coming tomorrow. Oh. And I better get to the library and drop my book off before the blizzard. All right. Take care. Love you all. Pray for me.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.